The movie opens with a scene where John and Tom, FBI agents, are at a harbor in San Francisco. John starts to smoke a cigarette to Tom's surprise. He never does. He asks John if his wife knows he smokes. John acts cool, but then Tom assures him that he will not tell his wife. By now, they knew that they had been tipped off as the enemy had their guard up. John counted about 5 to 6 shooters. They decided to take a look. With their guns out, both of them proceeded to check the area. John informs Tom about a backup while checking on a bullet outside a cabin. John realizes that the bullet belonged to an assassin, and right then, Tom shoots at the enemy. Aware of their presence, the men and the 2 FBI agents exchange bullets. John gets shot in the arm by the assassin he tried warning Tom about. As Rogue tries to shoot John again, Tom opens fire at him. Tom shoots him in the face as Rogue falls into the sea. They assume that there was no chance of Rogue surviving. John, knowing how skillful the assassin was, does not believe Tom, but lets it go. Backup arrives and the scene changes to Tom with his family. Diane, Tom's wife, tells him to warn John not to smoke in front of the kids while he was on the phone with John. As the call ends, a car stops outside Tom's residence and a man climbs out of it. Unaware of the suspicious man, Tom is in the bathroom when his wife's screams get his attention. He gets shot in the face and is thrown against a door where his wife and daughter were trying to hide. They both get shot, and Tom screams. As John and his wife were making their way to Tom's house, they saw fire brigades and police officers outside the residence. Hurriedly, John runs towards the house. The officer in charge tries to stop him, but then as John shows his badge, he informs him about the casualties. Unable to believe it, John gasps for air. He makes his way inside the house to check for clues and finds the same bullet he found at the harbor. By connecting the dots, he's convinced that Rogue was still alive and killed his friend and his family. The scene changes to a club in the Yakuza district. A man exiting a silver car is seen entering the club. The man makes his way past all the people on the dance floor. He skillfully kills the men guarding the private booth and makes his way in. A room full of Japanese Yakuza can be seen having fun and smoking cigarettes. The guy shoots a Yakuza member who seems to be having fun with a prostitute. The gunfire alerts the men inside the room as the cameras go off. The Japanese Yakuza sends his dogs to check, and they go silent. The man stands at the end of the hallway and they open fire. Thinking they killed him, the leader sends one of them to check. The man does not return, but one of the dogs does with a bomb around his neck. The bomb goes off, and everyone in there gets killed. Rogue enters the room where the Yakuza questions him on his betrayal, and Rogue shoots himself instead. The FBI enters the club in the next scene, with John leading the investigation. John finds the same bullet as he did in Tom's house. The scene changes to John getting a call from Jenny. She asks if he was still going to attend Danielle's first basketball game. He informs his wife on how they found the guy after so many years. He also tells her that this time he won't let him go. Jenny tells him how this case had cost him his relationship and not to ruin it with his son. The scene changes to the FBI office where Goi, the new team member, is introduced to the rest. John updates everybody on Rogue and his recent activities. The police are confused about Rogue changing sides. 3 years ago, he worked for the Yanagawa. John informs them about both Yanagawas and the Chang. Shiro Yanagawa killed Chang's family years ago, stealing and selling everything from the clan, leaving 2 statues of horses. Shiro, looking for a buyer, could start a war between them. They decided to keep an eye on both clans. The scene changes to Rogue inside his apartment getting ready. He enters the Chang's estate where a union is set between the two after he killed the Shiro's men. Still skeptical, Chang questions Rogue on his loyalty, to which he replies that he has no master, and he serves whomever. He informs Lee about the arrival of the horses, which makes him happy. Chang introduces 2 of his men to Rogue, the T brothers, whom Chang warns to keep an eye on Rogue. In Japan, Shiro is seen having a sword fight with a member of the clan. Kira, Shiro's daughter, informs him about the horse being shipped out to San Francisco. He asks his daughter to go as well to keep things in check. She assures him of doing her best and leaves for America. The scene changes to Chinatown, San Francisco, where John is seen walking into a clubhouse to see a guy named Benny. As soon as they enter a room, Benny drops the act and informs John about his findings. The person who had made Rogue's bullets had been killed last week. A plastic surgeon who might have operated on Rogue was found in his kitchen, killed. Another friend of the doctor who presumably might have helped with the surgery was found dead. Benny informs John about the last surgeon, but that he might be hiding. John asks him to contact him when he finds him. The scene changes to a harbor where the T brothers meet Rogue and their contact. Rogue hands Wu, the older brother, an envelope. Trucks are being loaded with fancy cars by the Japanese Yakuza, and the horses are said to be in one of the cars. The trucks, along with their guard, leave the harbor, but then are surrounded by the police. Already aware of the procedures, they tell the officer about the already made arrangements. They obey when the officer doesn't budge and get out of their cars. The Yakuza ask for the officers' captains, who turn out to be Wu's contact. The guys are shot at the harbor, and the truck with the horses is taken by Rogue to Chang's warehouse. Wu confirms the presence of the horses. Chang awards Rogue with money and a girl. The FBI arrives at the harbor. John checks the site with his team and concludes that whatever was stolen was big. John and his teammates are seen driving to a cafe where the officer is found and beaten up by him. He asks about him, about who was behind it, but the officer gets shot by Rogue. Finding his position, John orders his team to circle around as he chases Rogue. Unfortunately, he loses him. The scene changes to Kira, Shiro's daughter, landing in America and taking over the operation. Rogue is seen calling John from his apartment. He informs him of the shipment and tells him to meet him there. Upon arrival, John is surprised to see Chang and Wu outside of the warehouse. When he asks them to open the warehouse, John sees Rogue. He finds out that his identity is now Victor Shaw. John also tells him that whatever he had done, the surgeon couldn't change his eyes and that he recognized him through them. John lashes out at him by asking him about how he killed his partner and his family. Upon searching the area, his team finds nothing, but John seems to recognize Rogue. Impressed by his contacts, Chang now trusts Rogue even more, unaware of the fact that Rogue was responsible for tipping the cops. Chang asks Rogue to stay at his house to keep an eye on things. John is seen practicing his shooting while Rogue stares at Chang's wife and daughter through a window. The scene changes to Chang's daughter being playful with Rogue, to which his wife warns him not to come between her and her family. Wu enters as soon as Mrs. Chang leaves and tells Rogue about how he still doesn't trust him. He informs him on how he's responsible for running things around here. The scene changes to the aggressive T brothers in the Triad district. A biker, presumably from the Yakuza clan, provokes him and his friends. Chasing him, Rogue brings them to the Yakuza bikes. Fists are exchanged, and amongst the fight, Rogue kills Wu's brother with a katana. The FBI reach the scene in the morning where they conclude that the katana, a Shiro trademark, had killed him, and this could start a war. John orders his men to stake out at a famous Yakuza place in case. The scene changes to Wu informing Chang about the incident with his brother. Chang tells him to lay low, to which Wu is furious. Adding fuel to the fire, Rogue provokes Wu by commenting that a man should never give up his honor or his family, and tips him towards a Yakuza club, the Seiyu Tea House. A shootout breaks out in the tea house later, where Wu orders his men to kill everyone. One of Shiro's really close henchmen is there. Goi informs John about the commotion. On his arrival, both the Yakuza and Wu's men are killed. Terry is also killed by one of the bullets fired by the men. John spots Rogue in a building, which he chases after him, but ends up losing him again. The scene changes when Rogue informs Chang about Wu and his men making a scene at the tea house. Chang is furious, but is left with no option. Rogue is at Kira's office, where she informs him that her father was very pleased with him. She tells him about how her father's next order was to kill Chang along with his wife and his child. She assigns 2 men with him for assurance. John is with his wife, who is not happy about the men stationed outside their house. Worried about what John had gotten them into, she felt sorry for him. She tells him how his work ruined their marriage, afraid of them turning out like Tom and his family. Benny calls John and informs him about the surgeon. In Mexico, the surgeon, hesitant at first, does not want to tell them. He's afraid that Rogue might find him just like they had others. He tells them how Rogue resembles someone who was working for the FBI. He also tells them how he had changed his bone structure and voice. The scene changes to men entering Chang's house. He seems to be sending his wife somewhere. When in his office, Wu shoots at him. Rogue comes in and shoots at both Wu and Chang. He seems to have killed both his wife and children as ordered, but he kills the skilled fighters that were waiting outside. Rogue is then seen escorting Chang's wife and daughter into a car. The scene changes to the FBI receiving pictures of Rogue fighting the Yakuza and escorting Chang's wife and daughter. Shiro arrives in America and John visits him with a file containing pictures of Rogue. Rogue enters the Yakuza warehouse and Shiro welcomes him with open arms. He presents the horses to Shiro, who, as a reward, gives him a briefcase. The briefcase holds the file alongside money. Shiro's men hold guns against his head and ask men to question Rogue about Chang's wife and child. Just as Rogue kills both men, Shiro notices the fake horses. The suitcase blows up as soon as Shiro leaves the glass office, killing most of his men. Rogue and Shiro fight with katanas as he questions Shiro about the incident 3 years ago. Rogue finds out that the man who had tipped them off was none other than John. Furious, Rogue kills Shiro and contacts John to meet up with him at the harbor. John informs Gio for backup. Positioned in place, John searched the area for Rogue. They get into a fistfight where Rogue questions John about the incident. Not believing him, Tom tells him to look him in the eyes as they were the only things surgeons could not change. Guilty, John tells everything to Tom about how he tried to get out. He said that he had told the Yakuza about him, but he thought that they would just scare him. John is shot by Gio on accident when he was trying to aim for Rogue. The movie ends with Chang's wife receiving one of the horses and Kira, Shiro's daughter, receiving her father's head, and Tom drives off in his silver car.